Hello everybody and welcome to another Twilight Zone review. Today it is Season 2, Episode 20, Static, written by Charles Beaumont and starring Dean Jagger as Ed Lindsay. Now, this episode is kind of just so-so, but Dean Jagger's really good performance somewhat saves it. So I'll get right into it. We start in a boarding house where a bunch of somewhat elderly people live together, and there's two men playing checkers. One is a professor, the other is our lead character, Ed. And Ed just seems very annoyed by everything. He especially seems annoyed by the television set that's in the room. And so he winds up going downstairs to another room, and he finds this old radio of his. And he takes the radio upstairs, and at first he gets only static, but then he starts getting music, and he seems a lot calmer and a lot happier all of a sudden. And then the static comes back for a little while, and the radio's going in and out. And eventually he gets back his music and his recordings, so he's very happy. And then a lady comes in. Her name is Vinny. She is our other main character. And he's very crabby with her. All she wants to tell him is that dinner's ready, and he's really pretty mean to this lady for no reason. So we go down to the dinner part of the episode, and Lindsay's humming a song that he heard on the radio, and he's talking about how great radio is to another gentleman who's more excited about television, which is obviously a newer medium, and they argue about this. And this is one of the things I don't like about the episode. I like the radio. I have nothing against it to this day, but doesn't Mr. Lindsay realize television was the wave of the future? Him being so much against television makes him somewhat annoying and unlikable of a character. It's put a little bit over the top. He'll keep doing this throughout the episode. But his character kind of goes back and forth between being likable and unlikable in this episode. So anyway, he talks kind of down toward TV, and he loves his radio. That's pretty much all that scene shows. And it comes to the fact that, he mentions he got these live recordings, and it said, well, they can't be, the recordings are from a different era. So the professor and the woman Vinny go up to listen to the radio with him, but now all he gets is static. So he calls the radio station to see what's going on, and he finds out it's been out of business for 13 years. So there's no way he could have heard these stations unless they're from the past. So the professor thinks it's unlikely that he heard these. He thinks it's, in his mind, just what he wants to hear. But he doesn't rule out the possibility. This guy's pretty cool, actually. He says it's not impossible for this to happen. And, of course, when he's by himself, the radio is working again. So he gets all excited. He runs downstairs, says he's got it. Of course, when the professor and Vinny come back in the room, it doesn't work again. And the professor leaves, and he wants to dismiss her as well, but she says we need to have a talk, and she calls him mean and says she's not much better, so at least she criticizes herself too. And we find out they were going to get married, but they never did for certain reasons. And this is the best part of the episode, and you actually do feel for the lead character in this situation. This is where he becomes a more likable character, in my opinion. And, she gets him to admit that he did care about her. But now we understand that he's hearing these things because he really lives in the past, and he seems to want to go back. He has a hard time accepting the present, which is, probably why he criticizes television, because it was the newer, hotter medium at the time. So that makes sense, but I still think it makes his character somewhat irritating in some ways. It's like, why can't this guy just live in the present? We know living in the past doesn't do you any good, at least that's my opinion. So anyway, he kind of still, dismisses her, even though he admitted he has feelings. This guy's got some issues, obviously. And he starts listening to his programs again, which of course work because he's by himself. So now we go to the end of the episode, and he's in a good mood. He's happy about his radio. But when he goes back upstairs, he finds out his radio's gone. Well, it turns out it was sold to a junk dealer because they thought it would help, Lindsay's mental state not to have it around. So he goes crazy. He actually does buy it back. So to his credit, he did pay for it. He buys it back. And we go to the last scene where he's upstairs with his radio, and Vinny walks in, and they both appear to be much younger, although I'm not really sure that it's too convincing. They dress him up and try and make him look younger. It only half works, but what's interesting is instead of having Lindsay kind of just accept the past and get on with the future, they kind of do have him go back to the past. In this final scene, it's kind of hinting that he's still living in the past in a way, or maybe this will help him move on. I guess you can interpret it either way. The episode is really hit and miss, but Dean Jagger's really good, complex performance elevates it to an average episode. So I give Static 2.5 out of 5. So 2.5 out of 5 for Static. If you like those old sentimental programs, you might like this one. Thanks.